the fire department has a new dashboard, and I wanted you guys to see it. So we thought this was a good opportunity to do that also. So let's start with introductions from the DAB members, and just again, your name and what neighborhood you represent. So Melinda, I'll start with you.
Melinda Kellogg, and I represent Orchard Park.
Linda.
Linda Matney, La Placida Park.
James.
James Deckard, North Riverside.
Mark.
Mark Baker, Lake Ridge.
Sergio. Oops, you're muted.
There you go. Okay, Sergio Devora, El Pueblo neighborhood.
Thank you. Zach.
Hi, Zach Gingrich Gaylord and Riverside.
Thank you. Sean.
Indian Hills Riverbend.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, I think I got everybody. Did I miss any DAB member? Okay, good deal. All right. I think, and we don't have any approval of minutes. We'll have those at the next meeting. So we're going to start with the fire department, and Captain Eck is with us. Acting Battalion Chief Eck is with us this evening to talk about the new dashboard. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry we missed you at the early meeting, but things get a little crazy here sometimes. I'm going to try and share a screen with you. Can somebody enable that for me? If I can share the screen, I'll be able to really show you how this looks. I don't know who the host. Okay, here we go.
Captain Eck, I've made you co-host, and you are now able to share your screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Can you see is it a dashboard type of thing here? District
Yep.
1, District.
Yep,
Okay.
that's what we're saying.
Okay, the first screen is called District Stats by Time, and we can go through and look at each district. And this updates daily, so I can go from I'm going to put you in March now, and it will show us where we're at so far in March. And the alarms are sorted out on type, so we can look at how many fire alarms we have each month, medical alarms, and like I said, constantly update. So at our meetings, you'll know what's going on up to the day.
Okay.
If you have any questions about type of alarm, the next screen will show us what all those types of alarms are. Fire alarms are structure fires, any mobile property, etc. And then it breaks down the medical alarms, service alarms, and just other category, which is more of a rare type of thing. Then we'll move on to station response by district. This breaks down, I'll let it pull up here before I start going. This breaks down all the alarms in your district. So this will be here, District 6, and it shows, if we hover over these, once it gets wound up here, it'll shows which station is actually making the alarm in your district. So you would see Station 1 makes the majority of the alarms there. And then we can just kind of shadow over, and it'll cover their Station 13 and on and on. So it tells you who's covering your area, who's making the calls, which fire stations. There's Station 8 has a big portion of your area. So that breaks it all down by district and fire station.
I'm sorry, where's Station 7 on that thing you just showed us?
Yeah, I'll go back to it. Let me see.
Thank you.
It takes it a little bit to wind up because there's a lot of information there.
Station 7 is red, is noted in red.
Yeah. I'll find it for you for a second. Some of them are pretty thin.
Right.
Is it the 159 or is that a different one? Yeah, Station 7. There you
That
go.
is.
21st and the river there. And we can, the next screen will show that a little better. It breaks it down by fire station. So for example, like if you mentioned Station 7 there, we can look at Station 7 right here and see they made 197 alarms. And then it will show other stations made alarms in Station 7's area. So it breaks it down station by station and district by district to give us a little better information. And we're using some of this to help with our response times and coverages and such things like that. And you can see here, Station 1. Station 1 is one of our busier stations. That's in your area. The next one shows this one. This does apply to your area on the north end. The number of times the city units respond out into the county per our mutual aid agreement. Now we do, you know, the closest goes. We don't want a fire truck sitting close to a call because it's on the wrong side of the line. So this is how often we go into Sedgwick County. In March, we went out there 149 times. On down Bel Air, 14, that would be relevant for your district. And then we can go on to how many times the county comes into the city. I'll come up here shortly. And this tool allows us, we can go back months, years, and look at all this data. So it's, like I said, it's constantly uploading, and we're building on this as we. So Wichita responded into the county 331 times in March. And then if I wanted to find a different month, I could just click on a different month up there in February and see we went for 286. And we can see some trends when we do it like that. It's just a pretty neat tool. And then we're implementing this part of it now, the property loss value. It doesn't update quite as quick because we have to go through, there's investigation, which we call the FIU. They have, that data is kind of changes and it isn't able to be uploaded so quickly. But for February in District 6, we had $336,000, 500 property loss. And I'll go to March. You can see it changes quite a bit month to month. It's not as easy to trend that because events, you know, events happen and we don't know what they're going to be. So far in April, see there in April, District 2 had the big fires. So, and you guys haven't yet. It moves around there. I think that is probably mainly from one fire we had down south. I'm not sure why that's so high. I think we had one big fire down south. And I'm gonna see if I can share this one more screen with you guys. This is what we're hoping to implement to where it's more integrated into the dashboard. We're still working on it. So down here you can see District 6. This report comes from our fire investigation unit, and it includes the dollar loss and probable cause of a fire. And it can be more used for safety determinations as far as, you know, helping the citizens learn, you know, what's causing the fires. So, you know, you'll see anything. This one here was a vacant house. So we really don't know what, I mean, it's still, some of them are still under investigation, so we don't know for sure. And some of them they figure out rather quickly. We did have a possible Molotov cocktail on North Salina on the end of March. These are March. I don't have April date numbers yet, but I'll have those at the end of the month. Here's an interesting one, chemical soaked towels in the bathtub. Most people don't know that those can self-ignite if you have different oils soaked. If you have rags soaked with oils, a lot of times varnishes or stains or other oils, if they sit in the air, in the open air, they will ignite. There's a chance they will ignite. So there's a good lesson for people to think about if you're if you're doing some renovations on your home or stuff, those need to go in a metal bin with a tight lid as you can get, and it wouldn't hurt to put some water in there with them. So that's kind of what we use that for, is sort of learning experience things. So I think that's all the screen sharing I have. I can figure out how to undo that. We do Microsoft Teams more than Zoom, so it's a little new for me.
Hey, Captain, could you go back to station responses by district, I think?
Okay.
Maybe. See what that one.
And you that one?
Yeah. So this one is, I think, yeah. If you look at District 6, you can see most of the calls that the fire department responds to are from fire stations that are in our district. So the bigger one, like Station 1, Station 7, I can't remember all the other ones. I think Station 3 is in our district, and Station 8 and Station 13 is way up north. I know it doesn't get too many.
And then the exception to that would be Station 4 here. They're down south, but they have a specialty unit there called Rescue One.
Oh,
It goes to more of a diverse type of calls. So there you're going to see the Station 4 responding in all these areas. We have Rescue One at Kellogg and or Meridian and McCormick, and then Rescue 2 on the north side. But they go. There's a building fire, both of those units will go. So you'll see them responding in more other districts than where they're located.
yeah.
And the truck companies will also do that. So you'll see a lot of times you'll see a little overlap there.
Yeah. Questions for the captain? Anything from Deb?
Where can we find this?
Well, it's still, we haven't made it public yet because we're still working out the security issues and software issues. So I don't know when or if that's going to be accessible. I think the council members have access to it and the city manager, but I don't know when or if we'll make it available to the general public just for those reasons.
Yeah, but we'd like to, right? If we can figure out how to do that
Yeah.
without bogging down the system or things like that. So the intent is to do that. Anna also has access. So if you ever have a question, you could always reach out to Anna. She can look things up on there too. But I think the intent is every month we'll see this now.
Right. Yep. It should be the first of every month, and it won't always be me. The detective people on duty will take care of this as we get more people able to access it and learn how to work through it, which it's not too difficult right now. But
Yeah.
it should
It
be
gives a lot. Go ahead.
it should be a good tool going forward, and hopefully at some point, everyone will be able to get on there and just look at it. So.
Yeah. And I think it gives a lot of information that people ask during DAB meetings. So we can, if you have a question about a specific fire, you can look it right up. If you have a question about who's responding to what, the fire department can look that right up for us right during the meeting. So I know sometimes we'll get a question about a specific fire. Someone had seen a fire or knew about a fire and have questions about that. So should be able to do that. How about anybody else that's joining us that's not on the DAB? Any questions from audience members? Okay. Well, thank you very much for the preview.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll look forward to maybe not seeing you all the time, but we look forward to seeing the dashboard every month. So appreciate it. Thanks. All right. Okay. Public agenda. We have no scheduled items on public agenda tonight. Is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak about something that's not on the agenda? Doesn't look like that's the case, so we will move on to new business. And our first new business is PUD 2021-3. And I think is Kathy or Philip doing that one?
Well, it's my case.
Okay,
Like, I'm gonna start out. Philip has been assisting on this, and of course, Brian Lindeback, the agent for this, application is online with us. So I am, oh, and I also have a question is, I've been talking with Vincent Hancock. Has he showed up online because he had some questions and we've been playing?
yes, yeah, he's joined us. Vince, yeah, Vince is
Okay.
on the meeting tonight.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure of that. So
Yep,
this planned unit development, and you can see it's where it's located on McLean, just west of Seneca. Anna, can you go to the maps at the back, at the end of the report, please? Okay, so here's an aerial showing the uses, and that the red outline is B multifamily. Go down to the next one. The next map, please. There you go. So this is the zoning map. You have B multifamily. The yellow is duplex, and the white is single family residential. And then you have commercial there at the between North Dodge and Seneca, and then along Seneca South. And so, in an effort to try and balance things with the 2019 Delano plan update, and the infill, urban infill plan, we have determined, there's a lot of explanation in here about we're trying to make things more walkable. So along McLean Boulevard, we have a good transit system that you can access there. The bike paths, there are pedestrian walkways there. And so the recommendation is instead of rezoning this to an entire, like a commercial zoning to allow some of the uses, was to use a planned unit development that would provide specific range of uses. And in your agenda or in your report, you will see, I'm gonna go back up to, there you go. So stop, sorry. Okay, there. The planned unit development, and these are the proposed, basically they're general provisions. It gives a description of what they're wanting to do in that location. Right now, there's a medical therapy business there on the north end of that area, and then there are still single-family residences that are being occupied at this point. Scroll up a little bit there, Anna. I'm sorry, down, scroll down. I want to go through the protective overlay. So keep going. There were two comments. Keep going, scrolling down, whichever direction that is. I want to go further down into the standards. Okay, stop there. Okay, so basically, staff agreed with the PUD general provisions that the agent provided. One of the things that, because this base zoning is going to be general office, and then as you go through it, there were some uses that were, it was limited to. So we have worked out with the applicant these items. We did have this one comment about signage, that lighted signage be prohibited from facing residences. So if they have, the signs would have to be perpendicular to the street, so there wouldn't be any signage that would face the residences on the west side of Exposition and potentially residences that are on the east side of Dodge in that area. And then as part of the walkable pedestrian portion of what we're trying to do, we did, MAPD staff did recommend that if it's at all possible in the development, that bicycle parking would be included. I'm gonna scroll back up to item number 2, please. Okay. So allowed, this is where we get into specific, what's allowed by right, and then conditional uses that are allowed per what is in the Delano overlay district. And so anything that's not allowed that is shown there is not something that can go in this planned unit development unless there would be an amendment proposed, and then it would have to go back through a public hearing. But as you can see, we still have neighborhood type businesses, and we've tried to limit the encroachment of more more commercial type activities that are moving into that neighborhood in that location. The setbacks, there again, the base zoning is general office, and then we go through and pick out specific development standards, like the setbacks and so forth. So I guess if you have any specific questions about the not the protective overlay, the planned unit development, that's what this document is going to say. And then it has to, as I said, any changes to it have to be done with an amendment to what is approved here. There might be a few things that can be done by adjustment, but certainly if there's a land use that's added, then that would have to be done by an amendment. I'm gonna go back down to the maps, please. Okay, so here's our zoning map. Down to the next one. I wanted just to break this out and show you a larger zoning map that covers from Douglas north to McLean. So you can see that that's right on an edge there that with the duplexes and single family residential has a strong presence right there with limited commercial, general commercial, some industrial, kind of circling around the edges. And you have a couple of general office locations further west on McLean Boulevard. Go to the next map, please. This is our future growth concept map, and so that does show that that's in an area that we want to maintain residential uses. The next map down, please. Okay, these are the maps that we took out of the 2019 Delano plan update. And so in the center, you have the overall Delano plan, and then on your right, you can see there where there is commercial is showing right there on Dodge on the on the west side of Dodge Street, and then where we're proposing the planned unit development, or the proposed planned unit development is just to the left of that on Exposition. I don't know what else to tell you. Oh, on general office, one of the things is that residential uses are allowed up through limited commercial. So by doing the planned unit development and zoning and putting the base zoning at general office, there still is the ability to do residential there, and whether, the market demands, whether it's single family or duplexes, or maybe a low rise multifamily type thing, it still does support or provide the opportunity rather to keep that area residential. So with that, I would try to answer any questions. Philip, is there anything you want to add to this?
Nope, I don't think I have any more information that you haven't covered.
Okay.
All right, so just so we get the rules for Zoom here, so I'm gonna open it up to the DAB, see if there are any questions or comments for staff or for the agent who is here, and Brian Lindeback. And then after the DAB has had their questions answered, or then we'll take it out to the audience and take questions and comments from the audience. Each person will have 5 minutes to speak from the audience if they want to make comments. And I would like to do that by voice, not in the chat. And then we'll bring it back to Dab. So Dab members, questions, comments for staff or for the agent?
Hey, Kathy, what comments, if any, have you received in writing from the residents or anyone responding to the posting?
I have had a phone call from a nearby neighbor because we did send out, we had originally advertised this. The applicant deferred it, and then we re-advertised it and sent out a new notification with the PUD zoning. So I did have a neighbor, immediate neighbor, call about that. As I said, I have been talking with, emailing mostly, with Vincent Hancock, and also Chris Parisho has been involved in some of that exchange. And so other than that, I don't have any other documents that are in the file with this, except those things that we've heard from or Vince has sent in and that type of thing.
So can you summarize or I guess that's the word I'd use, the comment or complaint as a result of those conversations?
I think basically we were looking, some of the discussions have been about the parking demand that would be placed upon that area. Another issue was that they didn't want commercial encroaching into that residential neighborhood. I just lost my train of thought. There was another one. Parking, the commercial encroachment. Oh, we did make note in the staff report that as it pertains to the Delano plan, that update plan, that there were some issues in the PUD that did not completely match with what the Delano plan that was adopted reflected. And I believe I touched on that with basically keeping that as residential and limiting and not having a commercial encroachment into that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Scott?
So Kathy, the PUD, I noticed on the graphic that's on page 10, there's really not a lot of that within that area. In fact, if you look at that, it's really only in kind of the ballpark area. Is that new or kind of something that we're just now starting to use, or what makes it kind of unique for this time where you don't see it pretty much anywhere else in the area?
Okay, so
Kathy, this is Brian Lindebeck. May I speak to this case a bit? Okay, thank you so much. I think one thing to note here is this is a unique property in that it's transitioning from a very heavy commercial use to the east of us, which is general commercial. There's no higher zoning classification other than industrial zoning districts. So this property is situated right between a single family on the west and then general commercial on the east. So I think it's important to understand that, this is trying to balance that transitional period, space in a very small amount of land. Presently the land is being utilized as a business, and that's the intent, to keep it using this business here. So I think most of the neighbors in the area are supportive of the business and they like the business. I don't think they've been bad neighbors, and I don't know that that has been said, but I think that is my understanding from our client, is that people are satisfied with them and some of their activities over there. They've been good neighbors. So I think that's important to note. Another thing to note is that generally this is a general office PUD. There's only a couple provisions in here as far as land uses that are adding in some things that would normally be allowed conditionally. And those are personal improvement services and personal care services. I think if you read through the PUD text, their desire is to add some of those uses in as a companion to the current products that they're providing and services that they're providing to the community. And I would also add that on that map, that second larger zoning map that you saw earlier, if you notice the darker green along Meridian, I'm sorry, not Meridian, along McLean Boulevard there is already several parcels that I think there's upwards of 5 parcels that are already general office along there, not general commercial, general office. So there's a pattern there that's already established. And I think of all places within the McLean right-of-way, it would make sense to have this transitional zoning adjacent to general commercial zoning. So as you get closer to downtown, then these types of uses start to increase and transition away from the very restrictive single family uses. So as you can see, this is a unique situation where we're trying to balance a lot of uses, a lot of potential uses. We're also trying to future-proof it too, to a certain degree. We understand that someday things may change in this area, and we're trying to provide some flexibility for that change with regard to parking, and we've talked about in the PUD where a parking study would be provided to staff. So it puts the city in the driver's seat as far as what is reasonable and what's allowed. So there'll be a lot of input. Of course, the Delano overlay requires redevelopment activity to be reviewed and approved. So there's a lot of steps and checks and balances. Partly we're trying to come into compliance, bringing this property into general office zoning, because that's functionally what is being used here right now. So there's a lot of things that are being done. It looks very complicated when it's probably not as complicated as it may appear. But I think hopefully that helps you guys get a better understanding of why we did a PUD here and and why we've set it up this way.
Scott, if I could add maybe to answer your question in a broader sense, is a planned unit development is considered a zoning district. It's a custom zoning district. And so that is used instead of like a straight zone change with maybe a protective overlay, because that gives it the applicant a more of an opportunity to really just specify what kind of uses, what kind of activities are going to go on in there without having to do, you know, the zone change to like general commercial and then say, okay, you have all these uses that you can do in general commercial, but we're going to not allow this, that, and the other. And so with this PUD, they have called out the types of uses that will be allowed based on the general office underlying zoning, and make mention of what the Delano plan update says.
That helps. Thank you.
Other questions from the DAB? So I have one question that I want to ask before we go out to the audience, and maybe this is in the report and I missed it, but is there, I can see what the uses are that are allowed by right or by condition, but is there a plan that the services in this area would be services for the neighborhood? Do you know that, Brian? Or have they decided?
The land uses that are presently there are the desired land uses to be allowed. And so primarily the things that you're looking at would be the medical related services that they're presently performing, the therapy that's going on there. And then, they have rental properties there. They do have hopes and plans to transition some of the rental property into business opportunities, which would be maybe more therapy space in different offices. So they're not planning to leave, and they're not planning immediately to transition to a different use, but they want it to be set up so that if and when they do transition, it's done in an orderly manner. If it's a tear down and a rebuild, that would be something that would be looked at later on. But right now, it's they're just trying to work within kind of what the confines of what they have, the existing buildings that they have.
I might add to that, Brian, isn't what do I want to say? Doesn't Fairplay, they have clients that come from all parts of the city, right? They aren't just
Yes,
base. They're
that's right.
known throughout the city, so it's a specialty service that they are providing. So it just wouldn't be a neighborhood node type thing.
Correct. That's a good thing to point out. Thank you for helping me answer that. Yes, it is. I would say it's probably a regional business that serves the greater Wichita area.
Okay, and they're looking right now, at least, to have services that are complementary to that or part of their organization.
Exactly. Yeah, they're.
Okay.
I think they're pretty well renowned in their field as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions for the DAB? From the DAB? Okay. I know we have Vincent on the meeting, and I'm sure Vince, do you have questions or comments?
Then comments when it's my turn.
It is your turn.
Okay, then. Just for clarification and disclosure purposes, I am the Vice President of the Delano Neighborhood Association. I do not necessarily speak for everyone, but we've had many neighbors ask questions, and we've tried to be a conduit for communication and the ability to express their opinions. Starting off, which I do need to start my timer because I want to be respectful to the DAB. I'm actually speaking for two of us, but we had one little old lady that, bless her heart, she wrote a handwritten letter, didn't get it to me in time enough to get it to Anna, but let me read this letter from this lady. Quote, "It seems people with money and influence are always wanting to change our neighborhood. No consideration is given to the effect it will have on the residents. We have families with children that still attend school. This street has already become a speed zone. I don't know how many times I've tried to back out of my driveway only to have to pull back in. This is a common occurrence. I can only imagine how much more of a problem your proposal will be. What you're planning for your good is only a detriment for us." So those were her comments. And then in the remaining time that I have, last month when this came almost before your DAB, it was first proposed as Central Business District. In the 2019 plan that we worked so hard on, your DAB looked at it, pretty much everybody in this town looked at that. We had very clearly defined that our business districts are Seneca from the river to Kellogg and Douglas from the river over to Vine Street. And then a little bit of an exception in the kind of the northeast area on 2nd Street as well. There are not 5 areas. There are 3 office areas on McLean Street that are grandfathered in. We've not asked them to say, hey, the zoning's changed, so now you have to tear those down. We believe that that grandfathering is okay for those businesses, but the encroachment does have an issue. If you read the staff report, it does clearly say this does not meet with the plan that was passed in 2001 or the one that was passed in 2019. Just as a reminder to the board, the definition of zoning is relating to the division of areas into zones that restrict the number and types of buildings and their uses. I want to talk about buildings and uses. If you read through the document, you really don't know what the future holds for this PUD. You get very vague descriptions such as long-term redevelopment, provide maximum flexibility with property development standards, intended to allow for the property to redevelop into a more conventional mixed-use development with the potential for a mix of residential and office types use set forth herein. They claim that Delano is actually not part of Delano, it's the downtown fringe. Well, I think there's a lot of renters and homeowners that would disagree with that characterization of the neighborhood. And it also says that this PUD reflects the highest and best use for the subject property while provisioning for balanced needs of the neighboring properties. Not really sure where that balance is at in this document. By right, general office allows pretty much anything except for general commercial and manufacturing. This could turn into a hotel and no further zoning would be needed to have that happen. And again, talking to the neighbors in the area, they've said TheraPlay has not necessarily been a bad neighbor, but in recent months, there have been complaints about illegal activity by subcontractors. So they're not encouraged about enhanced commercial activity on the property. And we have been burned recently in the past by developers who promised a pancake house and gave us a girly bar. So to be blunt, we're not real trusting of the word of developers. When this was first proposed, the agent called me to discuss their plan. And rather than receive exclusive information, I said, hey, why don't you just ask to be placed on our March or our April agenda and you can present your ideas in front of the entire Delano Neighborhood Association. They chose not to do so. We had our meeting last night and our president was never contacted. Be that it is may. I believe that there are vague descriptions in this PUD application. There are 0 site plans. We don't know what they plan on doing. And instead of it saying that it encroaches into the established residential neighborhood on the west side of the site, that's incorrect. It's the west side and the south side. If you measure it by perimeter, 66%, 2/3 of the perimeter of this property is residential. And if you look at the current zoning, 2/3 of the zoning of this property by square footage is residential. So I say this, if the property already matches the existing zoning to be using it for office and residential, What's the need for a change in zoning? I disagree with the staff when the staff's own writing says the requested zoning change is not consistent with the Delano neighborhood plan. How is that used as a justification to approve this? And then I also question if our own planning staff is not willing to enforce the DO neighborhood overlay district that they spent all this time and effort to help us put together for that 2019 plan, what is the point of having a neighborhood plan? So if any members of the board or anyone else has any questions, I'll be available.
Questions for Vincent?
Yeah, I just maybe want to support that. I was looking at the zone and noticed the residential majority of these two parcels. And it is, I think I have the same reservations that Vince brought up about opening up the use of each of these to commercial when there is already the therapy there. And especially if there's renters there and we have a housing crisis already, it seems like we want to preserve what housing we have and not just possibly give it away. It seems harder to get it back than it would to keep it right now. So thank you for bringing that up, Vince, and I appreciate that perspective a lot.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience that wants to speak?
Ms. Claycomb, I could, when it's appropriate, I'd like to respond to some of those statements.
Okay, let's see if the DAB has any questions for you. So I'm gonna bring it back to the DAB. Questions?
I do.
Just go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, James, go ahead.
Is there any particular reason why general commercial is being pursued over office?
This is not general commercial.
Yeah, this isn't general commercial. It has general commercial adjacent.
Oh, sorry, I got confused when we were talking about general commercial adjacent. Is there any particular reason why the need for the flexibility? Like why it's written so vaguely in the PUD?
I can speak to that, Kathy, if you'd like. So I would say it's not vague. It's very specific on different types of uses that are allowed. I'll reiterate that this property is being used as a business presently. It is being used as a general office type business. We're trying to come into compliance with the zoning code as well as enhance the rest of the property for future development. And the idea it would be that, you know, we could have mixed residential development here, as well as the business coexisting as they do today on the property. And on top of that, any changes regarding site plans or things like that would be required to go through the Delano overlay district approval. So any changes to the property also have to be seen and reviewed. So I think there's I think Delano district is in the driver's seat as to how this redevelops in the future in a large way. So I don't see that being a negative. In fact, I see it being a positive because the properties to the east could develop into much higher, denser, more intense uses, and this property could buffer some of those more intensive uses. And with regard to placement of this property, this is on the edge of Delano. Across the river is no longer Delano. This is on the very edge of Delano. So, and there are general office uses already along the Delano northern edge. There's 5 businesses along there, or 5 general office zoning districts already. So we're matching a pattern that has occurred already. And those, to my understanding, are not grandfathered in. They have been, gone through the same procedures as this project has to obtain the proper zoning in the past. So I think that's important to note. It is on the zoning map. You can hop online and check it out. They're the dark green property. So I think this is a good thing for the neighborhood. It's providing structure and order to how things develop. It's following the Delano plan. It states right in it that all the first provision of the PUD says subject property shall conform to the recitals of the DO Delano Neighborhood Overlay District. So to me, I think you guys are very well aware of the Delano Overlay District, and as you know, it's very extensive as far as how things develop and how they provide structure there. So my hope is that you guys will notice that there's been a lot of thought put into this PUD, and while there are some things that allow for flexibility, it all is going to be reviewed in due time as things do redevelop. If they even do redevelop, it very well could be that this site remains as is for the next 10 plus years with small revisions to existing units there. So, but the main reason, we need to come into compliance to get this property zoned. So just to kind of circle back to that original question you had.
I would also like to make a comment that in the staff report, yes, we did acknowledge that this proposed zone change did not fully comply with the Delano plan. However, it specifically states in the planned unit development that the way that the uses that are allowed still allow the residential activities or uses to remain. That is not possible where right next door, if it's zoned anything above limited commercial, you may not have residential uses in that zoning district. As the uses become more intense, residential uses are not allowed. So, I can understand that, but by the same token, with the custom zoning, we still have the ability to have to maintain the residential there. If that, like Brian said, if that in the next 10 years, it's better to stay that way. So the ability to maintain residential is still there with that PUD.
Kathy, so is it right now currently that that there is not that ability to maintain the residential right now on it, and that this would protect the capacity of this zone to be residential, although now with the potential of being mixed use? Or is it that right now it's that 66% of it that's currently residential would, if this didn't go through, would just maintain being residential and you couldn't develop it into an office space? Like, which is?
Right, I guess what I would point out there is that the TheraPlay, the business that's there now, is located within a multifamily zoning district. So, what they're doing is there are some medical type uses that are allowed in multifamily zoning districts. Those types of things are not allowed. Let's say if that business wanted to expand, would not be allowed to expand into the single family residential and the duplex 2-family residential zoning. This limits the range of uses to, if it does, the commercial side of it, and we're thinking, we use commercial sometimes incorrectly. The general office that allows like dentist office, chiropractors, that type of thing, could not be located within this proposed zoning district without that having the base, using the general office as the base zoning, but it still allows for those residences to remain there. If, let's just say, if a residence were destroyed by fire or something, you could still build a new, go back in and build a new residence in that location if that was what the property owner wanted to do. So I don't know if I quite answered your question to your satisfaction. Zach?
Yeah, well, I think I was looking at it more from trying to understand what the residents currently, their point of view might be if they're better served as residents of this property, say they're renters, are they more protected by the way it is now, say they want to live there for another 10 years, or if the zoning changes and the market appears more beneficial to a commercial development of that, how does that zoning change impact the ability of them to stay in their homes if it seems like that now that it's a mixed, now that the zone is mixed use, is it better for the market to have commercial there? Are those renters now forced to look for someplace else because we changed the zone?
Well, I ultimately that's going to be up to the property owner as to whether it works for them in the long run to keep those as rental residential units, or if they're going to, their return on their investment is going to be better served by, removing those single family rental houses.
But, and not to belabor the point, and I won't go on, but right now they would still be, regardless of whether or not it's better to put commercial there, right now they have to be residential. You couldn't put a commercial where these houses are right now, regardless of what the market.
Not the way it's done.
Right. And if we change it, then there isn't that zoning protection for people who live there to keep living there if it suddenly becomes more feasible for commercial properties to be built there.
Well, in that, if it's rental units now, because I think the applicant has purchased that entire block with the exception of one property. So that property owner could decide not to renew leases, and they would have to leave anyway, even if it does remain the same zoning.
Maybe I could add some light to this. The bulk of the property is a parking lot and a medical office building.
That is a false statement.
I can share my screen. I can show you. It's clear on my aerial photograph. I mean, there's over 50% of the property that is covered by a parking lot and a medical office building. And I'm not want to argue here, so I'm not here to argue. I just want to make that statement, and I can quantify it for you if you want right now. But the large majority of it is operating as a business. It's a medical office business. It's whether it's an office for attorneys or an office for medical, that to me that there's not a whole lot of distinction there for the types of uses that's going on at the property right now. So I think just to put a cap on the whole residential component with general office zoning, with all general office zoning, if you have a base zoning classification, you can do residential or you can do office. And that's essentially what we've done here is we've allowed for both to take place on the same parcel of land. So it's what the market demands. If the market demands more rentals in this area, certainly the market's going to follow there. If the demand shows that, hey, we need more offices in this area, certainly the investors, if there's investors out there, they're going to want to convert some properties to offices. So what we're trying to do here is create the flexibility for the future, as well as get this property into a better zoning classification that matches the uses that are on it right now, which is primarily a parking lot and a large medical building.
Well, and I think we have that in our packet on page 8. There is an aerial shot that shows, I think, what you're talking about. I can't tell you what the percentages are, but there is a picture that shows a parking lot and buildings. I have a clarification question, Kathy. I think sometime, so the DAB tonight doesn't have in front of them the zoning use chart. Normally, if we're at a in-person meeting, they'd see that. But I think sometimes we think B multifamily zoning means that it can only be residential. And my understanding is there are residential uses in B multifamily, but there are also public and civic uses and commercial industrial uses. And if I'm looking at it correctly, medical service is already in there as a commercial industrial use in B multifamily.
Yes, that is correct.
That's correct.
Okay, I don't know if that makes any difference, but I just want to make sure that because you guys don't have that zoning chart in front of you, you can't see what's already allowed in B multifamily zoning. So it's not just residential uses. So I think, Kathy, if TheraPlay right now, in that B, just in the B multifamily, they can do whatever, but in the single family, the uses come down.
Yes, the use is more restricted. The only thing you could do in single family is in the way of commercial type activity would be to have a home occupation that is within the dwelling unit.
Okay.
So, yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, Deb, any other questions, comments, discussion? Bill? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the dark on what I'm about to ask you, so I don't know if Kathy is the right person to answer it or not. It's probably not Vince, because I know what his position will be. And I don't blame him. How much authority does the Delano District have when a site plan and or detailed construction plans are submitted to the city for permit for building changes and reuse of the land? Because once we do this, we won't see it again.
Okay, so the process for that would be, Bill, is that as long as when they submit, when anybody submits a request for a building permit, a change, at this point, we don't have a site plan because all we're doing is a zoning change. So, but at that point in the future, when there is a building permit pulled, then they have to review as to whether that structure or that business meets the guidelines or the general provisions of the planned unit development. So that goes back through Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department staff. It also goes back through Planning Department staff to make sure that the intent or the language in the planned unit development is being followed.
Kathy, I don't think that addressed my question. I appreciate the specifics, but what I really want to know is when this gets a site plan and proposed development for any kind of changes, significant changes in the future, how much review consultation is performed with the Delano district to ensure that they are satisfied with it? Or is there any?
The-
And the reason I'm asking is, without getting controversial, the instance that was noted about the development down at Seneca and Kellogg a year or so ago, I'd hate to be responsible for having something like that reoccur.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Well, in this instance, that use is not allowed according to what the general provisions of the PUD is. Because it doesn't allow a drinking establishment
Okay.
in this PUD. Okay, so if for some reason someone came back and said, oh, we want to change what the allowed uses by right are and say, we want to put a restaurant bar there, then it would have to go, the process would be is that they would have to file an amendment to the planned unit development, and that would trigger the same public hearing process. You would have, these public meetings we're having, you would have a right to protest, and that would go on to the city council for final approval, because a PUD is a zoning district, and all zoning district approvals have to have the final decision by the city council.
So let me summarize what I think you just told me. Should this zoning change or this cut be approved, the neighborhood association, the Delano district, would have no further jurisdiction or approval authority over development changes, as long as they were compliant with the described uses.
That's correct.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Other questions from the DAB?
I have a question.
Hold on just a minute. I think Melinda was next, and then, yeah, Melinda.
I guess my question is, from looking at, there's multiple, little pieces of this, and we're kind of lumping them all into one, which makes sense because it sounds like they own all that area. Why, I guess my question is, if the medical is allowed in the current zoning on the multifamily, why are we changing it to general office as opposed to just the parcels that aren't, or because it looks like where the parking lot is, 2 of those maybe are single family now. So why aren't we just changing the areas that aren't already multifamily to multifamily? What's the difference?
The parking area, Melinda, you can have ancillary parking in TF3 and SF5 because they're in proximity to the B multifamily. Okay, so one of the reasons for the planned unit development, because B multifamily uses that are allowed are the single family, duplex, multifamily, accessory apartments, assisted living units, group homes, and group residences. And then you have the public and civic uses, which include cemeteries, places of worship, college or university, community assembly, daycare, golf courses, hospital, library, nursing facilities, parks, recreation, recycling station, elementary, middle, and high schools, and utility miners. The commercial uses that are only the commercial uses allowed in B multifamily are a recreational marine facility, medical service, which is what this current Fair Play business falls under, and a wireless communication facility. there are conditional uses that allow a bed and breakfast, a heliport, and here again, parking area, an ancillary parking area. You can have mining or quarrying, oil and gas drilling, rock crushing, solid waste incinerator are conditional uses, allowed by conditional uses in that B multifamily zoning district. So if you go back to what is limited in the PUD language, they have removed some of those items in the multifamily, the B multifamily. Well,
So the general office with the PUD makes it a little bit more restrictive, is what you're saying.
yes.
Is it, okay, that makes sense.
And then the conditional uses, the Delano Neighborhood Overlay District has limitations on what conditional uses are allowed.
Yeah.
So they don't allow some of those things like the industrial manufacturing that would be allowed as a conditional use in B multifamily. That's not allowed in the Delano overlay zoning. Overlay zoning.
Yeah. Just to reiterate what Kathy just said, we followed the Delano plan for all these uses that are restricted. The reason why we put them on the plan is so that if ever the Delano plan flexed or changed in the future, we would see what was approved tonight, or if it's not approved tonight, we would see what those uses are. So it's very explicit as to what those uses are allowed and what uses are not allowed. So whereas if you just let it run with the plan of the future, it'd be hard to see what those uses are. So that's why we listed out each individual use as it's allowed within the Delano plan and which ones are not allowed. We've not shown those ones that are not allowed. For example, rock crushing and solid waste incinerator, those are not allowed. Oil drilling is not allowed. Mining, quarrying is not allowed. All those nasty things that you don't necessarily want in your backyard are not allowed. So we've explicitly removed those from the PUD and only allowed things that would be allowed and considered, compatible to the Delano area, which is what we did there. To maybe answer your question, Melinda, on the why we've got medical uses only, why didn't we just go for just B multifamily? We certainly could. I think this will be a more cohesive zoning and a more manageable zoning classification than B multifamily. As you can see from the existing zoning map, there's single family, there's TF3, and there's B multifamily on the property in different areas. And this would make it easier to manage from the city standpoint, having this PUD document to refer back to. And it would be a more cohesive development with this one classification.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark, you're up next.
So I'm just curious if there's anything in the Delano overlay or anything in this zoning change that would restrict what the eventual look of this project would look like if we do end up taking down some of those other buildings and then rebuilding other things. One of those buildings is a particular color blue that I'm not sure I know what we would call that. And I don't know if that fits the rest of the neighborhood and what else is around there, that if there's anything else like that that would be restricted by this change.
One of the things that you will see is that you won't end up with like 5-story buildings because of the building setback requirements and different things like that, compatibility with residential that's within a certain proximity. So you have compatibility standards that require if you build up, then you have to be set back from your property line by so many feet. So that there's not a wide range of how tall the buildings can be. Generally, and I was looking in here to see if we have landscaping requirements uh, uh, screening of all like trash enclosures, things like that. I'm looking to see, Diane, I don't.
Kathy, could you speak to the Delano Design Review Committee? I think that would be helpful to everybody to understand the review process and how new applications work, because I think that's kind of a lot of concerns here is about how do we get to see what happens here in the future. And so I think that Design Review Committee could speak to some of those issues.
So the Delano Design Review Committee, we have, with the Delano Overlay Zoning District, we have adopted, there's an adopted set of guidelines about architectural compatibility, the types of materials that are used, that type of thing. So if staff receives an application for construction of a new building, we would look at it from the Delano overlay standpoint and see how it meets those design review criteria. If it doesn't meet those design review criteria, then we have a Delano advisory board that we call together and work with the applicant to make sure that the design is reflects the guidelines, or it allows that advisory board to make a deviation from what is set forth in the design guidelines. That committee, that advisory committee, can then make that recommendation and approve the designs of the structure.
So Kathy, that's for anything that comes to the planning department?
Yes.
How about if they come to MABCD? Do they have to go through that too? So just planning?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, it's flagged in MABCD that the property is located within the Delano Overlay Zoning District, and they get kicked up here to make sure that their designs fit in with the regulations, and also the size and how the building's sited on the property and that type of thing. Because we have had a couple of those that staff determined that it did not meet the design guidelines, and so we called a meeting of the advisory committee to review the project and then make recommendations to the applicant as what they would consider in the way of materials, footprint of the building, that type of thing.
So just to Mark's question, I think he had a fairly specific question about colors. Are colors part of the design guidelines?
No.
Okay.
We have kind of we request that they not be, what do I want to say? I want to say it's like neon type colors, different things like that, but there's nothing that restricts the color, because paint is not a permanent thing.
Okay. All right. Other questions from the DAB or comments? Okay, it's time for a motion then. And I can't make it.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to
What's the motion?
the motion from me is to accept the staff's recommendation as written to change the zoning to a PUD with the two caveats that were in the staff recommendation.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll
For
second.
administrative purposes, I'll second it.
I think Linda seconded.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so just to be clear, it's to accept the staff recommendation with the PUD, and I think the two staff recommendations along with that were that lighted signage be prohibited from facing residences, and that staff recommends the bicycle parking be included in the development. Correct, Kathy? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna have Anna take a roll call since we had such a lengthy debate on this one. So Anna, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I just want to double check who seconded the motion. I heard Mr. Washburn and Linda did it at the same time, so I wasn't quite sure who.
Linda.
Linda.
Linda,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. All right, let's go ahead and start with Mark.
Yes.
Thank you. William, Bill?
Are you calling me?
Yes.
I'm going to vote no.
Okay, thank you. James?
No.
Thank you. Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. Linda?
Yes.
Thank you. Sean? I'm sorry, Sean, I did not get that.
Can you hear me? Oh,
We can hear you now.
oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you. Sergio?
No.
Thank you. Melinda? It looks like Melinda froze on my screen, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Zach, and then I'll come back to Melinda.
No.
No, okay. Melinda, it looks like you're back online.
Yeah, sorry, I froze. No.
Okay, thank you. And that is 6 nays.
Did we get James? Did we get you, James? Okay.
So it looks like it does not pass with 6 nays and 3 approvals. So 6.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to our second case tonight is zoning case 2021-14. And are you doing that one, Philip?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're on.
All right, very good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Philip Zievenbergen. It's been a while since I've been to DAB 6. Good to see you all again. Sorry we stole Bill Longnecker from you.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get enough of him. So
Yeah,
anyway,
thanks, Philip.
Zone 2114 is a requested zone change from single family SF5 residential to LC limited commercial. It's 0.84 acres right on the northwest corner of 13th and McLean. It's not the immediate property that has the office buildings on it. It's the one just west of that at 2202 West 13th Street. It's the property that has kind of a small, it used to be like a retail business, and then there's like a single family home further back on the property. Just for intrigue's sake, those 3 buildings have been around since like 1922 or something like that, and everything else is built around it. Just was very interesting. Anyway, the proposed use for the zone change request is for a restaurant. As I mentioned before, the property has those 3 buildings. The one closest to McLean, 13th Street, which is where the proposed use is going to be developed as a restaurant. And then you have the single family home with a detached garage behind it. The applicant intends to keep the single family dwelling and detached garage as they are now. And therefore the site would consist of 2 different uses. You would have the single family in the rear, and then you would have the restaurant use along 13th Street. Both residential and a restaurant use are allowed in limited commercial zoning. The applicant desires to develop as develop the restaurant as permitted in limited commercial, which does not have restrictions on it regarding size or whether or not there can be a drive-through or drive-up window. They would also like to have the ability and flexibility to potentially do retail if the restaurant doesn't work out. Given that regard, and when looking at the character of the neighborhood and kind of surrounding zoning classification, staff is recommending a protective overlay on this, which will meet the needs of the applicant's desires. And we've actually got the okay with this on the applicant. They are in full support of this. But the protective overlay will minimize negative impacts for the surrounding properties. The protective overlay will restrict the site to the permitted uses in the neighborhood retail zoning district, which is NR, except for the restaurant. The restaurant would be allowed as it is permitted in limited commercial, because in the neighborhood retail zoning district, restaurants are restricted in size to 2,000 square feet, and they're not allowed to have drive-through or drive-up services. And I don't think the applicant is intending a drive-through, but I think they're looking at like a pickup window. So whether that's something where individuals are ordering ahead and then being able to just walk up and get their food, or maybe drive up to the window and get their food, something to that effect they need, or desiring the ability to have a restaurant as allowed in limited commercial. But all of the rest of the uses on the site would have to be restricted down to neighborhood retail, which given your discussion previously on the previous case of what's allowed in general office, neighborhood retail is one step above general office, one step below limited commercial. So everything you just talked about in general office, plus the addition of retail and restaurant. It's basically the whole classification of neighborhood retail is really designed for neighborhood scale, very restricted commercial uses that are to be compatible with surrounding neighborhoods. Whereas limited commercial can do things that are pretty much any major shopping center you've seen which does limited commercial has a lot more available uses to it, and a lot more uses we'd have to probably pull out that would not be appropriate for the area given the residential nearby, that it just made sense to go down to neighborhood retail anyway, except for the restaurant use. The property surrounding the area on the north side is Zone B multifamily and has apartments. On the west side is also Zone B with a medical building. You guys just talked about how B allows medical services. To the east is Zone GO, general office, and has offices, and the property to the south is across 13th Street is GO. They just started moving the lane, and based on a previous case regarding a vacation of an easement, I know that they're developing duplexes on the south side of 13th Street. So it's zone general office, but it's going to be a residential use. The property is not platted. This particular zone change does not require it to be platted. The only thing that would trigger that is if they do an addition or a renovation of the inside that affects 30% of the square footage, or if there's an addition on that is like 51% of the value or more to the building would trigger platting. So they can leave it as is right now. Most of that would be dealt with through building and construction, as you know, if any of those things come up while they're trying to get permits and stuff like that, then they would be notified they would have to plat the property. 13th Street is a paved 4-lane arterial with sidewalks on both sides. Public services are available. The community investments plan identifies the site as appropriate for commercial development, which encompasses the full diversity of commercial development, anywhere from convenience retail, restaurants, and small offices, personal services uses, and possibly located near or mixed with residential uses. The site is also in the established central area, which Places for People talks about regarding infill development. 13th and McLean is identified as a neighborhood hub, which is defined as a commercial or mixed use hub of less than 40,000 square feet, primarily occurring on 1 to 2 blocks of a neighborhood and centered at an intersection. The neighborhood hub provides a range of goods and services that can satisfy the daily needs of the surrounding neighborhoods. Development is smaller scale, with individual spaces typically less than 2,500 square feet in size. And so that really even just kind of lends to having that protective overlay to neighborhood retail, which really kind of condenses down the size. of what commercial uses can be done to keep it more on a neighborhood level. And so we feel that this zone change is still compatible with specifically places for people plan in addition to the comprehensive plan, giving it a commercial appropriation. So overall, staff is recommending approval. With the protective overlay as it described, that restricts all the uses down to neighborhood retail except for the restaurant, which can operate as if it were zone limited commercial. Our findings for this, we already talked about the character of the neighborhood. Especially when you don't really find higher intensity commercial uses until you get closer to Meridian, where like Ace Hardware is and stuff. That's when you start seeing the first introductions of limited commercial zoning. This part of 13th Street from McLean till probably 3 or 4 blocks west is still pretty residentially focused, except for the area closer to McLean. And so neighborhood retail protective overlay is appropriate here. As it's zoned right now, technically, there's been basically some grandfathered rights going on with that building directly on 13th Street having some commercial uses in it. I don't know the full history behind it, but I believe it was allowed to do that before the current zoning was applied. And so really what this is doing is allowing, kind of bringing into compliance and kind of rid of that question of whether or not something is grandfathered in anymore. The property could just be continued to use as single family residential. That's perfectly fine, except if they wanted to use that front building for any type of commercial or medical use or something like that, the rezoning is appropriate. If we remove the restrictions and allow the zone change to happen, how will that affect nearby properties? If we were to approve a full limited commercial, that would probably have detrimental impacts to the nearby surrounding, and that's why we're putting the protective overlay and restricting it down to the uses in NR will help minimize what negative impacts there are, and is a lot more neighborhood friendly type of zoning classification. We've already talked about the conformance to the comprehensive plan, and we don't anticipate that this would have any negative impacts on community facilities. The existing public infrastructure will accommodate the proposed use. So I do know we have Charlie Brown here. He's with PEC. They're the agent for the applicant on this. If you guys have any specific questions for him, otherwise I can stand for any questions you might have for me.
Thank you, Philip. Any questions for Philip or the agent for the applicant? Bill?
Yeah, a couple. But I think my question needs to be supported by displaying the visual overlay of the property, the aerial. Anna, can you do that, please? While she's bringing that up, what my question surrounds is twofold, I guess. First, I'm a little bit confused, and maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention to what I read and what you said. Does the applicant intend to use this as a sit-down restaurant and a carry-out, or primarily carry-out?
My understanding is both.
Okay. And so what about, I guess I'm concerned about leaving the residence and the garage on the property. That's why I'd like to see the overhead again. Whether there's sufficient area there for parking and an entrance and egress that won't be a traffic problem right there at 13th and McLean.
Right.
We've already got the apartment building.
There's a driveway. There's basically 2 driveways that can be used kind of as a horseshoe for traffic in and out. If it has a sit-down component, they have to provide 1 parking space per 3 seats in there, and basically they would be restricted on their capacity inside if they weren't able to meet that parking. So that would be something that, you know, their capacity is based on how much parking they can provide on the site.
And so if that happens, what covenants or processes are in place to ensure that drainage doesn't get shifted over to surrounding property?
Right. Any type of paving over top, you know, there's permits that have to be done with that. That's through the building and construction department. They review those plans And, basically have to get the seal of approval that they're not just putting a slab over grass and making sure drainage is,
Okay, all right, thank you.
pouring over to the next property. That's not allowed.
Since I can't pull back into the documents, I'd still like to
Right.
see that overhead.
Right. They do have spaces where they could pave if they wanted to make a parking lot. Again, and really, if they're paving a parking lot, they may be forced to plat the property, which then has to require a drainage plan. I don't know the particulars, but basically there are checks and balances in place that they won't just, pave over some grass with, a little bit of asphalt or gravel and let, drainage just go hog wild.
Okay.
It's one of my questions. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on just a minute, Sean. Anna, can you pull the planning case back up, please?
PDF page 5.
Yeah.
All right, give me just a moment. I had it up and I lost it. Let me pull it back
That's
up.
okay. Well, okay, Sean, go ahead and ask your question. We'll let that come back up though.
I was going to ask this later, but I think Philip answered it. Philip, did you mention across the street they're building duplexes? I know it's not connected to this, but is that what you mentioned?
That is correct. I worked a case where the owners of those properties requested to vacate a portion of a utility easement that had no utilities in it in order to allow the development of the duplex to be set further back away from 13th Street to provide for their parking areas. So the houses would be closer to the rear property line. They wouldn't have been able to do that with this little stick out of a utility easement. So that's the only reason I know that is they intended it for duplexes. You can see they're already starting to kind of mark out where the houses are probably going to be built. If you drive by there, they've been moving a lot of dirt recently.
My other question is, when I look at the property, I was thinking, could they use the front of that property to build a parking lot? Is that possible?
The front of the subject site.
Yeah. Well, no, not just that,
You
but like
scroll
maybe
up
the residential
aerial
area.
on one more. There you go. The building that the restaurant is looking at is the one on the far left corner in the bottom part of the site. And so, especially with moving to a commercial designation now permits you to provide parking within a setback versus if it remained a residential. And there's just going commercial is just cleans up the ability to manipulate the site to have a cleaner use for a commercial property. So the land to the east of where that small building is that you see that is grass, that could be eligible to be provided for additional parking if they chose to. I don't know what their plans are necessarily, but there is room on the site to provide parking, and the commercial zoning allows that to be closer to the property line than the current residential would allow.
Bill, do you want to come back to your question about ingress and egress? Is this the picture you wanted to look at?
As you can see, like there's two driveways basically on just slightly to the east and just slightly to the west of the building in question, and it kind of forms a horseshoe.
Yeah. And those two driveways will remain or can remain.
Yes. Yeah, they weren't planning on any changes to the existing inlets and out and drives.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions from the DAB?
I have.
Oh,
go ahead,
Yeah.
Jack.
Go ahead, Melinda. Go ahead, Melinda.
So I'm just looking at the street view that if you pull the aerial back up, sorry, Anna. The driveway to the house looks like it is right to the east of that little building that they want to make the restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. I guess my question would be more for the developers is then how will that person get to their house with all these, I mean, obviously they'll get to their house, but it just seems strange that the road to your house is also being used for a restaurant. Are there plans to move that entrance?
Charlie, if you want to take that.
Yeah, Philip. Hi, everyone. My name's Charlie Brown. I work for Professional Engineering Consultants, PEC. We're the agent for the applicant. I have to admit, I'm kind of a last-minute replacement for Rebecca Melius in our office, who took off this afternoon for Topeka because she's taking the professional engineering licensure exam tomorrow morning, bright and early. So we did have a conference call with the applicant just to fill you in with what limited information I have. The building in front would be remodeled slightly to include some ADA restrooms. I think they're planning for maybe 10 seats inside the building, 10 to 15, which I think would require 5 or 6 parking stalls. The parking stalls would be probably to the east of the residential driveway. So we'd have to do some parking lot improvements in that grassed area east of the store. Yes, and the people would be using the residential driveway and to also to get in and out of the business. So, but it's a small operation. We're thinking maybe a couple of tables outside for patio seating. I understand that maybe it's a barbecue operation, someone that has a barbecued food truck that wants to have a brick and mortar presence. So it's a very limited thing. But the parking would be basically east of the residential driveway, just east of the building.
Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
Zach, did you have a question? I know somebody else.
Yeah,
Zach?
Go
ahead.
I wondered, I'm trying to think about the different businesses on 13th that have a drive-through, and I can't think of any until I hit 13th and West, and there may be some in between there, but just a block away from this case down block or two east, we just had a bunch of traffic problems that we ended up with a kind of lane divider to prevent some accidents. And it's a weirdly busy, not busy street there along 13th. Like it can seem really just fine and easy to navigate, and until it's not. And as I just kind of think about the walkability, we have just such a great walkable neighborhood, but nothing says less walkability to me than a drive-through and the kind of attendant traffic with that. And I just wonder I know it's a small capacity restaurant. I wonder if there's any concept of the impact that on traffic that can have, especially around an intersection that's as busy as 13th and McLean, that has had I would think significant accidents in the past few years. Even we've had some motorcycle deaths there recently, and like I mentioned before, we had the traffic study just a couple blocks west of there with the I think improvement of the lane divider there to help prevent some of those other issues. So I don't know. I wonder. To me, the question, I love the idea of a restaurant there, and I love the idea of walking down, and having more kind of usability of that space. But the drive-through it kind of makes me a little bit, it makes me want a little more information on the possible impacts of that kind of use in that space, especially so close to the intersection.
Okay, I'd like to respond to that if I may. At this point in time, excuse me, the applicant is not intending to do a drive-through. There's really not any room with that existing building to really accommodate a drive-through. Having vehicles in a queue and order board and all that jazz. It's just not room to do that. I think the drive-through concept would only happen if they totally redevelop this whole property, get rid of that little building in the front, maybe even getting rid of the house and the garage in the back and just redo it. If that happens, if that's what they want to do ever, this property will have to be platted. And at that point, we have drainage plans that we have to do. We have all sorts of city approvals and the platting process, I assume, comes back to the DAB as well. So if there's ever any major improvements on this thing, you'll see it again. It's just not going to happen without you guys seeing it one more time. But again, the intent is just a small restaurant. I'm not sure even a pickup window would work. I think really it's just going to be a walk in. He mentioned to us today that he would have a little order counter, 4 or 5 tables inside, maybe a couple outside. So it's a small operation and will continue to be that way until a major renovation, at which point, again, the platting process would kick in and you guys would see that at that time.
So it sounds like there was an exception made, and maybe I misunderstood this. The exception in the proposal is for a restaurant in order to accommodate a drive-through. Is that the case, or otherwise?
Long term. Yeah, I think he's looking at long-term stuff for this zone change, so that he wouldn't have to come back and do another zone change if he does something major. The attempt is to maybe accommodate that with this one zone change. And again, any major improvements would trigger a platting process, not a replat, because it's not platted at this point. Would trigger the platting process, at which time you would be privy to all the plans for that improvement.
And Zach, as you're new and maybe some of the other folks, I'm not suggesting this. I just want to let you know, you can always on a motion add things like that if you want to restrict something. The DAB has that ability to make those types of recommendations. So I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just letting you know. So. All right. Any other questions, comments from the DAB? All right. Vince, I think you're our only audience member still with us. Do you have anything on this particular case that you want to talk about?
You guys have actually helped answer a question that came up last night at our neighborhood meeting anyway, so thank you for that. And I just kind of the engineering mindset in my head, I did want to point out to everybody that we do have a double yellow line immediately south of both of the driveways. So the only lawful egress from the property would be to take a right turn and continue to go west on 13th. Down the road, to increase safety and reduce the accidents, as already been mentioned, on the east side of the river, this may be an opportunity to put center dividers in there to remind people, please don't try it. It's just going to end poorly when you crunch into somebody by crossing that yellow line. Question for the applicant, if the parking lot goes to the east of the existing building, would there be a divider between the parking lot at this property and the property to the east? Or is common with many restaurants, pretty much any McDonald's and any Wendy's type of deal, to where people might have the opportunity to essentially share driveways and then go from one parking lot to the other? Had that been considered?
That was not discussed in our meeting with the applicant, but I don't see any reason why that would be an issue.
Obviously, if you've got cooperation between two adjoining businesses, that makes easier traffic flow for both of them. Just an idea.
Good point.
It could be accomplished by a cross-lot access agreement or something like that. But yeah, I would take agreement from both parties.
All right, thank you, Vince. All right, I bring it back to the DAB. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Can we add to what Vince talked about is putting the little barriers in to this, or that's not part of it because it's not part of the land?
That adding dividers in the street is not something applicable in the zoning process.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll motion to approve it.
Second.
Okay, Anna, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, I can. Let's go ahead and start with Mark.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill?
Yes.
Thank you. James?
Yes.
Thank you. Scott?
Yes.
Thanks. Linda?
Yes.
Thanks. Sean?
Yes.
Thank you. Sergio?
Yes.
Thanks. Melinda?
Yes.
And Sec?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Okay.
Philip. And
Thank you.
thank you, Charlie, for being here with us this evening.
You're welcome.
All right.
I should mention that it goes to Planning Commission this coming Thursday. So we're hearing this before Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
All right, Dab, any updates, issues, reports, anything from any particular neighborhood? Or
I had,
anything? Yep, go ahead, James.
I have a question that's not from our neighborhood. It's actually about the city. I obviously the big news about the Airbnb fiasco brought to light that almost everyone who's running an Airbnb is outside of zoning. Is that being looked into? What's being done about that right now?
Yeah, so right now, staff is considering what implications that has. They haven't brought anything forward to council at this point in time, but I do know they're exploring to see, okay, what does that mean? I did have Airbnb's local representative reach out to me today. I probably reached out to all council members wanting to sit down and talk about their precautions they are taking and plan to take and that sort of thing. So it's being looked at.
Yeah, I know several people who have run Airbnbs like by the airport, and I think almost everybody didn't realize that it was a problem.
Yeah, I think I didn't know it was illegal. So yeah. Okay, thanks for the question. Other questions? Yeah, Bill.
Anna, I had forwarded an email to you from Danny White about he's having difficulty getting responses back on about a half a dozen issues. Do you recall seeing that? Okay, just looking for
Yeah,
that
I did
response.
pick up Mr. Yeah, Mr. Washburn, I'm checking with Access Wichita to go ahead and get some responses on those different cases that he did submit through Access Wichita.
Terrific. I'll let Danny know. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
You gonna do
Ask
anything?
what the intersection of 13th and McLean, what they were building there, but Scott answered that. And I was going to mention it's a very busy intersection, so I might get a little bit busier, but
Yeah.
at least that's close to my house. So I guess if there's a good restaurant there, I can walk over there.
You can walk, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, that I had been inquiring what was going into that location too. And so because they had the zoning they needed, it didn't come through DAB. And so it was finally good to hear tonight what the mail person that delivers in that area wanted to know, because she may have to change her route. So we were trying to track down what was going on there. So in case she needs to change her route. So yeah, so it was good to know. All right. Other questions, comments? Yeah, Scott.
Empower Evergreen. We're gonna talk about that next time, or do you want to talk?
We can. I can. Can we give you just kind of a little update on what's going on? Okay, I can make it pretty short and sweet. So those of you that have been with us, if you recall, we did the Empower Evergreen presentation a few meetings ago. That organization was created to be located in our new community center that is being renovated at 25th and Arkansas. And the purpose of that organization is to work on workforce and career readiness and education and small business development in the North End. The community center will be open to everyone, but it's since it's in that community, that's where it's targeted. Since we had our last meeting where we talked about that, Empower Evergreen has hired an executive director, Ariel Rodriguez, and he has now been in his position for 30 days. So it's been 1 month and he has hit the ground running. He is officing at the Evergreen Neighborhood Center with Anna and her group, and we will all move to the community center when it's finished at the end of the year. You may have heard that Gene and Yolanda Camarena bought the Nomar Theater, which is over at 21st and Market. Gene and Yolanda are on our advisory group, the Empower Evergreen Advisory Group, and have been with us from the very beginning. And they have bought that theater with the intent of donating it to Empower Evergreen to do something related to business incubation, but they want to hear from the community before they make a firm commitment of exactly what it's going to be. So a couple of good things that came out, many good things are coming out of this, but a couple of good things that came out of that. One is we were able to keep the theater. It will not be demolished. And there was some concern about that from the community. So that was just marvelous. And then the second thing is that while Empower Evergreen, we didn't have the intent to be ready to have a business incubator this soon, we couldn't forgo the opportunity. And so it's a good thing that the building will be kept secure and for a while until things move along a little more. But if everything works out, like I said, the Camarenas will donate that building to Empower Evergreen for those purposes. So thank you for asking. It's very exciting. Like I said, those of you that have been with us for a little while have seen how excited I am about this project. I think it's just only going to get better now. So thanks.
So
All
Cindy,
right.
the library is due to be complete or open by the end of the year?
Yes. And so Anna and I got in there today to look at it. And, you all have been in there, and it because the bathrooms are right in the middle, kind of looked like it wasn't that big of a building. Well, they've done all the demolition now. So the bathrooms are totally gone, and you walk into that building and it looks huge. And says, oh yes, this is what it's going to be like, because our intent, as I said, we move those bathrooms out of the middle to open it up so that it is a community center, not come in and you go this way to the library and this way to the neighborhood center, that you come in and you have this wonderful community center, and whatever it is you want to do in there, you'll find that comfortable space to do it. So it was fun to go in there today and get to see that right at the beginning, or right at the end of the demolition. And they're waiting on a construction permit. City has to do that just like everybody else. So we're waiting on the construction permit, and they will begin those renovations just very soon. But yeah, scheduled community center with the library back in there, and the neighborhood center scheduled to be done by the end of the year. So yeah, so exciting. So another exciting thing is if you drive by any of these places, the Evergreen Water Playground is complete. The Orchard Park and Manisa pools are under construction. And so Public Works has offered to give us a tour of those facilities if we would like. And so Anna and I have been talking about, first of all, would there be interest in that? So if I could see some head nods, or, okay, so there is interest. Okay, good. And then we want to think about what days would work for that. You know, we could, if we don't have a mid-month meeting, we could do it right after work on a Wednesday night, like we have our meeting. I haven't looked at the early warn notice to see if we have a May mid-month. Do you know, Anna?
No.
I haven't had a chance.
We
to-
actually got the early warning notice.
Would this
We
be a
just got the
swimsuit
early
meeting?
warning notice.
So do we have a mid-month May?
Look like, well,
Whoop, you're breaking up.
Gone.
Yeah, so another option would be to do it Saturday morning of my coffee, and we could invite people from the coffee also. So that would be May the, let me look here. It's the third Saturday in May, which would be the 15th. And we do those at 9 o'clock, and they figured it would take about an hour and a half because you have to, you know, drive from site to site, but we'd go, you know, I don't know what direction, but anyway, Orchard, Manisa, and Evergreen. We probably should end up at Evergreen because it's finished and it's so cool. They turned the water on for us the other day. It was really fun. It was on that really cold day last week though, so but everybody's like, stand back. So anyway, would a Saturday morning work? Nope. Yes, no. Okay. How about if I ask Anna, we just send out an email out, and we have some dates, and we'll see what gets the most people available. And then if you can't make that, I'm sure we could, you know, arrange. Public Works is pretty good. If, you know, if a couple of you couldn't make it, we could find another time where we could meet out there and see those new facilities. That sound good? Okay. All right. So
Councilmember Clayton?
Yep.
I am back online. Sorry about
Okay.
that. What I can do is I can go ahead and send out a doodle email.
Yeah.
And we'll see what dates work, what dates and what hours works best for everyone.
Perfect. That will work great. So that, and I think that's all I have. Oh, I will update you on the ethics policy, since you guys saw that last meeting. Where that is they've taken all of the comments from all of the DABs and put them into a single document for us so that we can read through those. And then the city manager has taken comments that were made at our last workshop and at the National League of Cities workshop that we did, and put those into the document with some notations. We have a workshop next Tuesday to look at all of that information, and hopefully come to, we don't vote at a workshop, but come to some sort of consensus that this is the document that we'd like to move forward with, and then in May vote on it. And the thing I heard from the DAB from you guys last time was a concern about it being applied to boards when you don't have training. So if it's going to be applied to boards, the boards need to have enough training to understand how it applies to them and what your responsibilities are. Is that was kind of the biggest thing I heard from this group, I thought. Okay, and I have voiced that to the manager, that I think that is important for my DAB, and I'm sure it was important to other DABs too. Yeah, so anyway, stay tuned and we'll see what comes out of that. So any last minute questions? Anything else?
I'm on
All right,
the
thank you.
I'm
Yeah,
on the
Scott.
task force. It's a city county task force to oversee HERF funds distribution.
What are those? HERF?
CARES Act, HERF,
Oh,
CARES Act funds.
now we call it HERF. Okay.
HERF, yeah, that's HEERF, HERF.
Okay.
So I
Good.
guess I get to wear two hats when I
Yeah.
meet in those meetings.
Great. I'm glad you're on that, Scott. That's really good. All right. That does remind me, I have a board opening. So if anyone knows anyone that would has an interest in financial interest or investments, we have an opening coming up on the Wichita Employees Retirement Investment Board. Is that what it's called, James? Help me out. Wichita
Employee Retirement System Board of Trustees.
Thank you. James has been on the board. So so if you know of anyone that has that expertise or that interest in investment funds or retirement funds, you don't have to have you don't have to be an expert. There are experts that advise that committee, but you do have to have an interest. Would you say that that's right, James?
Yeah, it is not for everybody, for sure. I have a degree in finance and a banking background, so for me, it is absolutely my cup of tea. But it is not for everyone, for sure. I previously at my old employer was able to get that time off paid, and so because it was used for Community Reinvestment Act. So they were able to take it as volunteer hours and helping the community. So they could write my time off, basically. So my new employer is not a bank, and they don't get to write my time off. And it's located in Hutchinson. So I either work from home or I work in Hutchinson. And since they don't get to take advantage of that, I've been going to those board meetings, which are Wednesdays at 3 on my lunch breaks, and it's not as rewarding anymore.
Yeah.
But it is a really cool board. I'm still going to the meetings until that transition happens. But if you know someone who likes to look at like financial statements or look at like actual, because like you get to look at what the city pension board is invested in, and you get to hear from the pension board managers and stuff like that about that. It's really cool. It's a huge fund, so it's kind of cool to hear those things. So it's definitely worthwhile if you have that kind of interest or know somebody who is interested in that.
Yeah. So if any of you are interested, certainly let me know. But if you know someone, either have them contact me or let me know and I'll reach out to them. So, or have them apply. They can certainly apply at any time. So, all right. I believe that's all I have. Thank you all. We will see you. Our next meeting is Monday, May 3rd at 6:30. And watch for that email from Anna so we can get those water playground and pool tours scheduled. All right. Have a great evening. Good night.